Back again with the propaganda news, guys. We have Virgin Media 1 live. Okay, this only was dropped a couple of days ago. This is the Tonight Show, of course, with Kieran Cuckoldry. Okay, it's called Irish Green Card Holders Now at Risk. Okay, so of course Trump is cracking down on a lot of the immigration and deportation of illegals and people breaking crimes, which is a great thing. Of course, the US have massive crimes, violent crimes. A really scary place, actually, in some areas of the US. We don't really have a sense of that crime in Europe, okay? It's very, very removed from our sort of senses on how actual crazy the violence is in the Americas. Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, and then America. They have some of the worst crime in the entire world, I would imagine. It's one of the most abstract things that we, can show comparing, the US and Ireland's crime and, Europe's crime. We don't have a sense of crime like that at all. So let's listen to this one, guys, and see how the news spin this story, okay?
An Irish green card holder made headlines recently when she was detained by immigration officials in the US after returning from a trip to Cork. Fiona Ward had been living in the US legally for decades, but was taken into custody and faces deportation over a small number of minor convictions. Her case has sent shockwaves through the Irish community there.
And there you go. We're not even 20 seconds in. And yeah, she has drug charges. So she's either pushing drugs, selling drugs, or taking drugs. And people want to kind of feel sorry for them. And that's not, how it works at all, guys. If you commit any crime, the US has enough crime. They don't want outsiders committing crimes as well in the country. So it doesn't matter how long you've been there for, okay? The law is the law, and if we don't abide by it, then, the criminals will run free. So yeah, there you go. 20 seconds in, that's all it took us.
It might not be isolated. I'm joined now from the US by US immigration attorney Caro Kinsella. Caro, have you, in your practice, seen a difference in how people are being treated entering the country?
Yes, since the cornerstone of the Trump administration campaign was border security. So border security is very strict. When you are seeking entry into the United States, whether that's a temporary visa, a permanent visa such as green card, or even the visa waiver, the ESTA that you file online, do expect to be adjudicated more stringently by CBP. These are Custom Border Protection Officers at the port of entry, and they have the powers, plenary powers, to deny your entry, cancel your visa. And what I'm noting in my office is an uptick in secondary inspection by CBP. That's where they will pull you into a back room, question you for hours. It is actually an interrogation, and that then will cause inadmissibility issues, and you will be denied entry. So there's a huge...
Good, that's great. That's what literally Americans voted for. Okay, they voted for Donald Trump. They voted for a strict immigration regimen. We should have that in Ireland. We're an island. We should have even more strict, we should have even more strict border patrol than the US in Ireland. It should be like Japan, where you only come in if you're 100% clean. No drug charges, no nothing. If you have a drug charge, you cannot go to the US. That's one of the things that the Gardaí, the Irish police, told us when we were like 15, 16 in school. They came in to speak to us and they're like, lads, if you get a drug charge, you can't go to Australia, you can't go to Canada, you can't go to America. And now, for some reason, the liberals, the woke Marxist mob, they want to brainwash the people into thinking, well, drugs are good. Selling drugs and pushing, these killing devices and killing drugs is fine, is perfectly fine. It's not, guys. Okay, maybe smoking some weed. I've never done any drugs, guys, but if you smoke some weed, I don't think it's that dangerous or serious. It's actually legal in most places in the US and Canada. But we're talking about serious drug charges that they're talking about here, okay? Serious drug charges, guys.
In that since the Trump administration.
Good.
And what about within the community in the States, Caro? I mean, particularly people like Fiona, who had a kind of a minor drug conviction and some traffic offences from years ago. I'd imagine
she was traffic offences. Yeah, so she was doing crazy shit on the road, and also she was pushing drugs. They're trying to downplay it, but that's probably what it was, guys, because I don't have any offenses on the road. I have no speeding tickets or anything like that. I don't have any crazy shit. So yeah, they're trying to downplay crime. Now, the Marxists, they want to get rid of crime. They want to get rid of the law. They don't see a need for law, for government. They want to just have the place completely lawless.
They're very, very nervous about leaving the country and trying to get back in, are they?
Well, speaking about that case, the Trump administration can technically not be blamed for that because there are laws in place. For example, expungements do not erase past convictions, and green card holders, depending on past convictions, arrests, etc., can get themselves into situations where they can be ordered removed and deported from the United States. So, not speaking specifically about the case, but the Trump administration has not impacted green card holders and whether there's past convictions, etc. What the Trump administration has done is they have made stringent moves on immigration. For example, if you're a non-US citizen and you're inside the United States, anyone from the age of 14, President Trump ordered under an executive order since January of this year what's called the AROR. That's an Alien Registration Report, and anyone that's inside the United States must give their name, address, legal status if they're applying for a visa inside the United States. So there's more strict adjudication and tightened policies because of this border security that they have really gone for, so to speak.
And I mean, the advice then you give to people who contact your office, people who have concerns about, leaving the country and coming back in, people on this side of the pond who have questions about, whether they will get through. Has that advice changed, or, in response, I guess, to the point you make about Cliona, is it the same as it ever was?
Yeah, I would always advise clients they should never be entering the United States. They should never be going to the consulate unless they speak to an attorney. All of my clients are fully prepped because what I will advise your listeners is if you are entering the United States, you must know the legal requirements for the visa that you are entering under. And the second piece of advice I would give you is absolutely speak the truth. But what I'm hearing is clients and people speaking to me, and they're giving too much information away, and it's bringing them down another yellow brick road, so to speak. So you want to keep your answers short, concise, and succinct, because if you confound an officer, they're going to default on denying you because they're trying to protect the US border.
Mark, you're over and back quite a bit to the States, and you would have been there relatively recently. I mean, what's the sense you get among, say, the Irish community, the Irish American community who are in the States, be they first, second or third generation, whatever?
I think it's a difference with the Irish American population, to be quite honest, and the people I would know who, for example, would work with immigrants who've just arrived. I have a friend of mine who speaks Spanish, teaches Spanish at a local immigrant centre. People are stopping they won't turn up anymore. Students are not going to that place anymore because they fear.
Yeah, because lads, and I'm not against Mexicans, they're the hardest working people. We're not against Latin Americans, but so many. I mean, I think there's an estimated figure, 50 million illegals are in America. America has a massive problem with Mexican illegals, Latin American illegals, even Canadians, Southeast Asian Indian people coming in from the Canadian border. They have a massive problem with immigration. We think we have it bad in Ireland, and we do actually. We actually have it a percentage-wise worse than the US. Because if you actually break it down, we brought in 400,000 people in a year. I think America brings in 10 million people a year, immigration, something like that. So if you break it down per person, okay, America only has 350 million people. We only have 5 million people. We actually have it far worse immigration than they do. So we need a strict policy. If people come here, no more paying for thousands of people to come to the country, no more of that bullshit by the UN, the EU. That has to be completely curtailed. We have to do a audit on who is in the country, if you're a criminal, if you're working here, if you're just taking from the system. If you just come to Ireland and seek refugee but not actually help the country in any way, well, I would say you get a first flight back home because, we can't have people that are here not working and not helping to contribute to society, or at least spending their own money that they create. Technically, guys, I make money from the internet. Let's say if you guys are entrepreneurs, at least be spending your money in the country. You know what I mean? So it's a really weird situation why people would come here and just take the dole, take the social welfare. It's crazy.
Will pounce and throw them out. And I think we need to have a careful distinction here between the policy that's popular among Americans, which is close the border to illegal immigration, and what will we do with the people who are already here illegally? And that second part, what ICE is doing, what Donald Trump is doing, is showing a certain lack of regard for things like due process. So libertarian supporters of the president looking at armed men turning up and taking kids and sending them back to a place that they're not citizens of, that triggers something for a lot of right-wing Americans. And I think also for the first, second generation immigrants who voted for Trump to stop illegals coming in when they came here legally are seeing their communities now under siege.
Yeah.
And they're people who Trump really needs. He needs the kind of Joe Rogan who complained recently about the ways in which ICE is acting. And he needs these second generation or first generation legal immigrants who are the vital next generation. And right now, that's where the cracks are appearing. It's what happens to the people already here that are illegal, as opposed to how do you stop that?
So what Joe Rogan was complaining about was the MS-13 or whatever, this massive gang, Venezuelan gang or whatever, some Latin American gang. They're like invading America. They took over some like apartments in like the South and in different places. And they were committing heinous crimes, you know, execution of people on the streets, like crazy stuff, human trafficking, drug trafficking. And Trump sent them all back, and he got one guy wrong apparently, but it actually, matter of fact, it found out that he actually was correct, Donald Trump, to send him away. The guy had tattoos of MS-13, he was helping them in certain ways. You know, these people are bad people, dude. Like, they don't deserve to be in the US or in Ireland. Like, if we have any sort of criminal activity, man, deportation, no question. I don't know, people in Ireland are afraid to speak about that. If you guys are afraid to speak about openly about stuff, like I said in the last video, you're the biggest bitch in Ireland. Like, you are a pussy, dude. Like, start speaking up, guys, because we need masculine people to speak up about these issues. Oh, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to rock the boat. Just, man, don't even watch my videos, because you are an absolute pussy. Like, speak up about stuff that you find that's insane, guys. Like, if you see some crazy guy committing crime, you know, some guy had a knife there in somewhere in flipping Offaly or some crazy place, and he was running after a lad, and you know, he had a BMW top on, and he was running after a guy with a knife. Like, that's crazy shit. The police should show up first of all and demand him to drop the knife. If he doesn't drop the knife, they shoot him. Okay, so that'll end that issue. And if he does drop the knife, then they arrest him and deport him straight away, guys. End of story. Within 24 hours, that dude should be on a flight back home, or put in prison for 100 years. You know, we have to be super strict with these laws. You cannot be emotional when it comes to crime, guys. This is why women shouldn't really be in the criminal system. They're very emotional. It should be all men, okay? And being like, no, this is bullshit. If this guy commits a crime, you got to put them in jail forever, for life, guys. Because they just re-offend. Like, people just re-offend. It's insane.
For being porous.
He also needs a certain amount of those so-called illegal immigrants. It's not a kind of a term I tend to use, but we'll stick with it for the purpose of this comment.
Of course he wouldn't use it, because he's just an arm of the government. He's bought and paid for by the government. Why wouldn't he use the term illegal immigrants? People do go to places illegally. Like, that's like a factual thing. Like, what, this guy is so disingenuous. Like, bro, again, have me on your show. I would dismantle that guy within 30 seconds. They would never have me on their show, you know? And it's funny because they never actually have based patriots on their show. They never have people that actually love Ireland. They just have these kind of wimps, you know, old men. Oh yeah, well, you know, we need this. And they're just wimps, guys, okay? They wouldn't have actual fighting men on this show because, you know, they'd just get dismantled. It's ridiculous.
Certain industries, like the agricultural industry, for example, and he knows this. So one wonders whether, and it's a point I put to Cal Thomas earlier, whether there's a degree of optics in all of this.
Well, I think it's a huge amount of optics, and it's another example of Trump just pushing his initial position being one where he pushes enormously out and will respond then to pushback. And it's important, therefore, to push back. Like, you know, it's interesting that President Zelensky of Ukraine had a disastrous press conference in the Oval Office a few months ago. But there, at the Pope's funeral, he was chatting in a very friendly fashion to Trump. I don't think Trump takes things too personally beyond a certain point, and therefore...
Yeah, that's that is the skill of a masculine man. Me too. I don't take things personally. I'm a laid-back kind of guy, as should all masculine men. We're just talking about business, guys, okay? And what he was saying to Zelensky was, you're having too much money now. We want peace. We want to do some sort of like, you know, settlement between Russia and Ukraine. And Zelensky was having none of it. So Donald Trump has to be hard on him, guys. You know, when you come to a point where you have to be harsh on people, unfortunately. So, you know, it is what it is.
Important. I find it very notable that there's been a very sharp drop-off in Canadian tourism bookings to the United States, even though the dollar has fallen by 10%, so it's a lot cheaper. And I'm not hearing voices from the US tourism industry telling Trump, hang on a minute, you're alienating our customers, think of us. So I think people have to push back against Trump rather than just take this lying down, and he will react, he will factor it in.
Can I ask actually about Canada, now that you've brought it up, and this kind of harks back to a conversation we were having a little bit earlier. You know, one of the narratives has been that Trump is just another manifestation of this rising tide of populism around the world. And then we had Mark Carney re-elected in Canada against all the odds, certainly a few months ago. Is that, in your mind, just an aberration, a kind of a one-off, or indicative of maybe a sea change?
I think
No, because what happened in Canada is basically Ontario and Quebec have most of the people. Okay, the east coast of America, of Canada, is very populated. Okay, and it's very, very liberal. Okay, the west, you know, a little bit. You know, Vancouver's a little bit. You know, it's pretty liberal as well. But the rest of Canada is very, very conservative actually, because it's, you know, guns, blowing stuff up, shooting. Like, they're very, very conservative people, guys. They like big cars and trucks and shit like that. They don't want Mark Carney. But what ended up happening is he started to lose a lot of the runoff, because Canadians would rather have a liberal president like Mark Carney than they would Trump, because they don't like Trump too much either, because he puts massive tariffs, and he actually is pretty bad for Canada, unfortunately. Trump is, in certain ways, okay, because Canada have not been good to him, because Trudeau has ruined that country. Trudeau is a piece of shit, guys, and he ruined that place. So that's why Trump is so harsh, okay?
is indicative of Trump discrediting the right-of-centre conservative political position that he has championed. And neighbours looking across the border who had been thinking of voting Conservative in a Canadian political context, saying, thanks, but no thanks.
Hannah, might we see that manifest then in other countries as well? A discrediting of the Trump candidate, as it were, wherever they exist?
I mean, well, I guess Ireland was one of the few countries to keep its governments in power. So, I mean, I think we have to see the next elections. I think Trump acts in kind of mysterious ways, and I think certainly in the Middle East, I mean, most of the states in the Middle East are ruled by autocratic leaders. I mean, they're kind of familiar with the kind of styles of policies that Trump is using. They're familiar with that autocracy. So, I mean, I think it's definitely kind of, I think it's demoralizing for a lot of activists in some of these countries who would have seen America as something of a beacon and kind of, you know, adhere to that idea of, you know, elections and democracy.
Mark, this is slightly tangential to the migration piece, but it's just something that struck me, is that successive Irish governments, right up until recently, up until Enda Kenny, would have always on Patrick's Day lobbied for the undocumented Irish.
Right.
It was the done thing. Obviously, I'll mention the undocumented Irish.
Right.
And I know this is more a reflection of kind of the changing landscape in this country, but it'd be hard to imagine Micheál Martin or anybody else in the future doing it.
There's always a remnant of people who are there. There's still that problem. Let's separate that out from something else. The Irish in America, in all honesty, are MAGA. I mean, you go there and they are the story, right, of the cop and the nurse who had a kid who became a lawyer, and that advancement through American society, of that
American
working
dream
class,
we talked about.
that American dream. And, you know, from the 60s where they were democratic, and then Reagan came along, and had that shiny city in the hill, and the Irish in America, in many ways, are at the heart of the emergence of this MAGA movement. And I think it's really important for us to look at that history. But we can also see back in history when the know-nothings, who were the 19th century of MAGA, attacked the Irish. So I think knowing our history, where we are now in America, where most Irish Americans are all like a fifth Irish, a fifth Filipino, half my family are like this, and they appreciate their history. But right now, they're very much pro-MAGA, because this, for them, is that sense of the American dream given to everybody. And I think
absolutely. Irish in the US would definitely be pro-Trump.
I noticed about,
you know, undocumented, even though, you know, they are technically illegal. So, you know, it's kind of that. Yeah, it's sort of a crazy dichotomy there.
It is. We're at the end of a super cycle of history now. Globalization has kind of come to a sputtering stop.
But it's amazing the pace at which that's happened.
Right.
You know, it's the classic thing of ask, when did the Roman Empire collapse? Ask the person tilling the field in Tuscany, they don't know.
And in many ways, Trump, as someone said, is asking the right questions but delivering the wrong answers.
No, he's just stopped globalism, and now these left-wing globalists can handle it, guys. And I love to see it. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. if you want to help me push back against the mainstream media, I'm going to be reacting to all these different videos that they put up, because I want to give the people the actual information and not give it a sort of a propaganda tinge that they, Virgin Media gives it. Okay, I love you all. Stay free, and I'll see you all in the next one, guys. Oh, and if you want to support me, hit the join link underneath the video, become a member today, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace.